everyone. So, today we are going to cover a very, very important topic, which is resume building. In this competitive legal landscape, crafting a compelling resume is a pivotal step for aspiring law students. As a law student, I was always confused what to put or not to put on my resume and how should I present it. For sharing insights on this and clearing our doubts, we have Mr. Zafar Khurshid. He's founding partner at TKC Partners. Welcome, Zafar.
Hi, Avani. Thank you for having me.
So, today we will understand some crucial do's and don'ts in showcasing legal skills, unconventional paths for skill development, and the importance of networking in resume building. So, Zafar, starting with my first question, can you share some tips for law students who are seeking to highlight their legal skills and knowledge on their resume? Like, what should they emphasize on and how they can stand out? Like a list of to-dos and not to-dos?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see if we can come up with something helpful. The first thing you should always keep in mind is brevity is the soul of wit, which means that keep it crisp, keep it short. The people who are reviewing your CVs often go through dozens, if not, scores of CVs at a stretch or in a day, which means that most of them start to blend together. What's really important is the little bit of attention that your CV might end up getting, through the first initial process that a team may have. Make sure that you're able to convey a lot in a little bit of space, so that if someone doesn't bother or doesn't have the time to get to the second page of your CV, they shouldn't miss something important. So keep it short. That's very important. Communicate your skills, what your experience is, uh, very, very succinctly. Make sure that you highlight the various opportunities that you've had in the past. Give 1 to 2 lines only, highlighting what you've done in particular offices, what opportunities you have had, and most importantly, what kind of unique access or unique experiences that particular internship or opportunity may have provided you with. I think that's really important. Second, of course, it's a very simple mistake that we make and we may not think about it. If you're sharing CVs with friends, often what happens is we come across multiple CVs with an identical format. And that might be a very catchy format. It might be a colorful format. It might be a very interesting way to present the information. But if you know that you got it from a friend, well, your friend is also applying to places. Chances are your friend is applying to the same place. So that doesn't help you stick out. Make sure that you put your own vision on it. Make sure that you communicate your own personality through it. Don't always go by a standard format that someone shares with you or that you find online. Small things can make a difference. Font choice can be quite important. Certainly ensure that there is consistency and uniformity in how your information is presented. Don't use more than 2 fonts on a CV document. It's okay to have maybe two. You wanna highlight or contrast certain headings and information so that it sticks out. That's good for presentation, but don't overdo it. So I think off the top of my head, these are a few do's and don'ts about how to format or present the CV. As to how to present the information, the content, what's really important, I think, is that, of course, go by your most recent experience first. Again, this goes towards how someone reads your CV. It's important to understand how offices look over or glance your CVs. Highlight your most important experiences first. Give more space to what you feel are the more substantive experiences, not necessarily the biggest names, the biggest, most high profile names on the CV, but ensure that you're really able to communicate where you think you have gotten the most experience and where you think you're able to, if you get a follow up, really show what you learned. So I think those are a few do's and don'ts that I would suggest to people who are drafting and sharing their CVs with firms or potential employers. It's very important, and don't be overly formal. This is not, it's not a job interview with the queen, but a casual approach may not be appreciated by a lot of offices. It's important to use dignified and formal language, but you don't need to pull out the thesaurus and find an alternate, a fancy alternative for every other word.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing. I have few follow-up questions while listening to
Sure.
you. I just noted down. So when you talk about creating a CV which is short and crisp, what is the standard, number of pages one should have? Like 2 to 3 pages is okay, or is it still like
I
a-
don't think you should cross 2 pages. In
okay?
my experience, I have come across a lot of one-page CVs. Uh, that doesn't mean they're light CVs. You can pack in a lot of content in one page if you're presenting it well.
Yeah.
Don't cross 2 pages. To me, ideally, a page and a half, that's a good amount of content. Two full pages can also seem overwhelming. So don't pack too much in.
Okay, so also, yeah, thank you for that. So right now we see a lot of people creating CVs in a very creative way. You have these tools right now like Canva, Adobe.
Yeah.
So do you feel that it changes the perception of the person who is looking at your CV, or just a normal Word doc also do if you have a good experience? I know that experience is relevant, but how you put it, does it changes the perception of the people looking at it?
Absolutely. I mean, presentation is always important, but it's important to remember that there's no one size fits all situation. You may be applying to offices that will appreciate a more conservative or traditional format for a CV. You may be applying to offices that would really, it'll stick out that it's quite a creative way that you've presented the information, that it's multiple colors, it has different sections shaped on a single page document. So maybe think about where you're applying, what kind of ethos that institution has, and maybe tailor your presentation accordingly.
Yeah. Okay. And coming to your point of recent experience, putting it first, sometimes the experience which is the most relevant for a particular job is not our recent one. So, do we have to change our resume according to the job profile we are applying for? Like, according to the skill set, should we first put the job profile or the internship which is like more suitable for that particular job profile?
Well, I think it's important generally when someone is reading a CV, keep it chronological. That's the accepted practice. Use if you feel that for a particular position, one of your experiences is more important than the other, well, dedicate a little bit more space to it. Maybe make sure that you use keywords or buzzwords to highlight that particular experience. But I think in terms of just pure formatting, chronological is key. It really helps shape the information, and it helps show your story or your journey to someone who's reading it, because who may not have the opportunity ever to speak with you before they decide whether or not your CV is going to go through to the next round. So if you start with where you started your academic experience, and from your academic experience where you started your professional journey and how that's progressed,
Hmm.
chronological I think really helps highlight that.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So let's move on to our next question. So, what other than internships at law firms or chambers can help build a young professional skills? Like, can you mention some non-traditional internships, the path, less traveled, how it may help you stick out of the pack, from the traditional law firm internships and court internships?
So we're right now, I mean, especially these days, we're seeing an explosion of allied industries or allied, skill sets, which can have a great impact on your legal career. And especially if you're, say, applying for a younger firm or a firm that has a really progressive mindset or progressive ethos, they may find it really valuable if you, for example, have experience with AI or legal tech, which is not traditional, which would not be a traditional legal internship. But if you have exposure to such things, I think it can highlight that you have certain unique and valuable skill sets. Apart from that, looking at more traditional skill sets, but not necessarily directly in the legal fraternity or in the legal industry, uh, working with think tanks and policymakers, or working with research institutes. These all have, I would say, overlapping or transferable skills. And if you can highlight how those experiences have informed and shaped your legal journey, that I think can be a unique, a USP for your CV.
Okay, so but like with my experience when I was a law student and I was interning with law firms, they used to like if it is a corporate sector I'm applying in, they wanted to have like a traditional my experience in that particular sector only. If I have like done one journalism internship or one policy internship, the other one always used to get the internships or the job
Hmm.
also. So I mean, it's my experience. I don't know how many law firms are open now for such a diverse CV, but what is your thoughts on such law firms? Or law firms, I mean, such selection when it is like,
Well, I won't comment on what law firms value and what they should value. I would say that personally, what I want to see from a candidate when I'm reviewing their CV is, yes, of course, that they're not run of the mill. If you have dozens of legal internships on your CV, as opposed to you have legal internships and maybe two non-traditional internships, what I will focus on is the length and substantiveness of those experiences. If you have a 6 month internship with a law firm or a chamber or a cop or a law or an in-house corporate legal practice, that says to me that you have learned probably a lot more than someone who has 1 month or 20-day internships. So yes, of course, different different institutions are going to value different experiences. Part of selecting where you want to intern, and I think we discussed this a little bit when we had our the other session. Part of selecting where you want to intern is how you think it will contribute to your larger and long-term, legal professional plans. But if one institution does not value a non-traditional internship or a non-traditional experience, what I can guarantee you that there are others who will, or will at least see that as something that makes you a candidate of note. It can intrigue interviewers that you've not just followed the traditional path. Yes, that's probably not the majority of law firms or offices, but hey, if you're looking to do non-traditional internships, then you're probably not necessarily looking to work with a traditional firm. So maybe if that's right for you, be confident about it and show the interviewer how that has really contributed to you developing the skills that will then serve you well in the legal profession. It's not about highlighting that I spent a month doing non-law. It's about highlighting what I learned in that month that I feel is going to contribute and make me a stronger candidate in my legal practice.
right, right. I think that is very, very well put. And it answers my question as well. Moving on to the third question is about networking and how important is networking in resume building for, I mean, not just for resume building, ultimately landing jobs and internships for you. And also, getting priority over other candidates as well.
Networking is, of course, key. In our profession, even at the highest level, you never stop networking. FaceTime, especially in the context of India, FaceTime and the face value of a lawyer, of a counsel, of a partner, it can make a huge impact on your career. Not just because, out of sight, out of mind, but because we as humans are psychologically primed to trust those who we are familiar with. So the more time you spend with someone, the more times you meet them, the more you get to know them. You may meet someone at a party or at a legal event or a conference, and you maybe get 5 seconds, 30 seconds. If you manage to get 30 seconds over 5 occasions, maybe on the sixth time, that person remembers you. And maybe you get to interact on a slightly more personal level. So, yes, it can play a role if you're able to have those experiences and opportunities. to network and get your name and face out there. When a person recognizes you, even if it's at a completely, subconscious level, they may give you that additional 5 to 10 seconds or the additional few minutes that can make a difference in you being able to sell yourself or convince them that you are the right person, right candidate for the job. Networking is important. As far as it relates to your CV, yes, of course, a lot of firms, if they see top firm names, or top the names of top well-known practitioners on your CV, that tells them one of two things. One, if they're familiar with how that office works, they know how strict your experience was, or how lackadaisical your experience was. Trust me, when we have worked with various seniors and we see that senior's name or we see that law firm's name on your CV, we know how hard you actually worked, and or we know how hard you could have worked. We also know how easy you could have had it. So the name means as much as the person understands it to mean. But the second thing it does tell you is, if you have certain names on there, it means that perhaps you work very hard, or you're well connected enough to be able to get those opportunities. That means that you may have something of value for the firm that you're interviewing with. Having said that, I would not discourage people who don't have the top names, the top 10, top 20 names on their CV, because I've interviewed several candidates who have worked with lawyers I've never heard of. But I gave them an opportunity because their experiences were well presented, and I was intrigued to know more about the people that they had worked with and the experiences they had had.
So many companies, while asking for CV, they also ask for an additional cover letter. So, how to write a good cover letter, and what are the essentials one should put in it?
What's really important, I feel, about writing a cover letter is that you must tailor it to that particular application. Don't use a general format or a general template, because your cover letter is your opportunity to really get the other person to know who you are and what your journey and your narrative is. Your experiences on your CV need to be crisp, need to be clear and brief. But your cover letter is the opportunity to highlight those experiences, show what you really learned from those experiences, and very importantly, how do you think that will contribute to the position that you're applying for, whether it's an internship, a long-term internship, or a more formal job or position. It's important that you highlight who you are, what your strengths and even your weaknesses are, maybe. And it's important to highlight why you've identified that particular application or institution to apply to. This helps with two things. One, it shows the person reading your cover letter that you really thought about your application. And second, it shows that you've done your research about where you're applying, and you know what their strengths are, what the opportunities that you feel you can find with them, and where you can contribute to growing their team.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Zafar. And it actually clears many doubts of people. I also had many doubts when I was a law student, and I have doubts now also when I'm a young professional. But still, thank you, Zafar, and thank you everyone for watching. We hope the questions have helped you clear your doubts about resume building. In case you have any other questions, do let us know in the comment section below, and we will reach out to you. Thank you so much.